I ended up majoring in communications journalism. I learned about marketing along the way. I thought internships were important, but I mean, at 18, I just knew that I didn't want to be a teacher. That's what I knew at 18.
To go through that for the first time while in that life stage, while a first time CEO, I think that's a real, crucible assignment to be tested in.
I really love the piece of supporting women and again, giving them those tools to be successful. So that's continued over the last, especially like 6 months, pick up some traction, which I love.
Doesn't matter who your wake up call comes from. At some point, we have to realize, like, I can lay a little bit of this down and the world's not going to fall apart. Welcome back to the Brilliant Balance podcast. My guest today is Betsy Hamm. So I met Betsy just recently, and I'm so fascinated by her career trajectory because she is a fellow Pennsylvania girl. She cut her teeth at the Hershey company, which was one of her first employers, and she worked in marketing for that organization. So if you're familiar with Hershey Park or the Hershey chocolate brand, Hershey Resorts, all of the things in and around Hershey, that's where Betsy got her start. And at a certain point, she was recruited to work for Duck Donuts, the fast-growing donut brand, sort of custom made, warm, freshly made donuts that started in the Outer Banks of North Carolina and expanded across the country and really around the world during her tenure there as essentially the CMO, COO, and ultimately the CEO of that company. And Betsy has now left Duck Donuts and is out on her own helping leaders and businesses build and grow their brands, kind of leveraging what she learned both at Hershey and at Duck. And I think that what intrigued me most about her story, beyond the titles that she's held and the experiences that she's had, is the way that she's continued to evolve through different seasons of her professional life and of her personal life while raising a family. She has 2 girls and navigating all of the complexity that comes with that very full life. So in our conversation, we're talking about what actually kind of changes as your life gets bigger. How has she evolved from stewarding an established brand to growing a fledgling brand, like taking Duck, out into the world, to starting her own brand like she is doing right now? And what does really sustainable ambition look like over the long haul? So if you've ever kind of wondered what it looks like behind the scenes of a high growth career like Betsy's, I think you're in for a treat and you're going to find a lot of wisdom in this conversation. I certainly did, and found her to be a really just delightful conversation partner. So let's get into the interview. So Betsy, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I shifted gears recently in this podcast sort of interview format and started asking people, tell me what little Betsy was like when we start the interview, because, it has been so illustrative. So will you share a little bit about what little Betsy was like?
Oh my gosh, it's funny when you say that. I'm like, whoa, I have to think about that. Like, right? How did that all start?
Mm-hmm.
I am the oldest daughter. I have 2 younger sisters. So I think growing up, I always was the person sort of taking the lead, organizing, coordinating things, and, dance routines in the backyard and those types of fun things with my sister. So I was definitely always very active, very involved, and as I grew up in high school, it was playing sports and doing those types of things, and just incredibly extroverted and very social from even like a super young age. So when you do say that, I kind of think, well, I guess I really haven't changed.
The seeds
in 40
are there.
years.
Right. What did you play? What sports?
I played volleyball and softball.
So fun. So fun. So you had this kind of like high achiever, eldest daughter vibe going.
Yes.
And then what happened from there? What was school like for you?
In high school and in regular school, like undergrad, geez, in high school, I definitely was, just probably your average student. I had A's and B's and I always struggled with math. So there was probably some C's in there for sure. I definitely had to study and put in the time and effort. And then going to college, is a different game because then you get to take classes
to pick,
for the most part of things that you like and that you could focus on. And I think in college is where I really just started to excel and kind of find my way and realize what I liked and what those passions were. And that, it doesn't have to always be about the book smarts, especially in business. So much of it is about connecting the dots and the people piece of it, right? Which I've always been very good at. So leaning into that more, I think you have that opportunity in college versus high school where it's like, take the test, get the grade, move on, take the other class. So
did you know you wanted to work in business? Was that like a thing you knew in college?
You know what? I don't think I really knew. And it's so funny because my oldest daughter's 18 and she's going to college. So it's like you're having all of these flashbacks of what it was like when you
Amen.
were
Hmm.
18. It's so wild. I was always liking the creativity, like the writing and the producing and sort of
Yeah.
the art piece of it. And ironically, that is my 18-year-old, which is very funny.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm literally, and she's going to the college I went to. So I mean, talk about
oh,
flashbacks.
wow.
She's my mini. But I think back to that time where I knew the pieces that I liked, but
Yeah.
my parents were teachers. All of their friends were teachers. I didn't even know what existed out there.
What
So
is
I just,
business? Right.
what is
Right.
business?
Hmm.
Yes. So, I think I ended up majoring in communications journalism. I learned about marketing along the way. I thought internships were important, but I mean, at 18, I just knew that I didn't want to be a teacher. That's what I knew at 18.
So fascinating, isn't it? How we're like hard reject. My mom was a teacher too, and I told her the same thing. And here I am, essentially teaching. I mean, for all
It's
intents
so
and
weird.
purposes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Full
So then
circle.
you went to school, and what was your first job out of school?
My first job out of school was actually at a media agency. So I did internships for Hershey
Hmm.
Entertainment Resorts when I was in college. And that's what really opened up my eyes to marketing and understanding. I kind of knew PR from school and that was my concentration. But then I was like, oh, there's this marketing thing and promotions and the brand strategy and marketing strategy. So I had internships at Hershey when I was in college. And then when I graduated, they just didn't have anything open. So I actually worked at a media agency for the first year until something opened back up at Hershey, which again was in marketing, which was a really great experience too.
And this is a fun part of your story. I was saying before we started recording that because I grew up in Pennsylvania and, Hershey Park was like the theme park we went to. We've taken our kids there. You do this whole World of Chocolate tour.
Yep.
It's just such a delightful, like, happy place. And you spent a fair amount of time there. What was like your favorite assignment while you were at Hershey?
Yeah, so it's the sweetest place on earth, right?
It
Which is
is.
an awesome, an awesome
Disney gets to be
tagline.
the happiest, but Hershey is the sweetest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hershey Park happy, sweetest place on earth. Yeah. So we have all those things. It literally does smell like chocolate.
It
Like that's
does.
legit. So you have all these pieces and coming out of college, essentially, I was at an agency for a year, but coming out of college and having this opportunity to work for this brand that was what they celebrated. Hershey Park celebrated their 100th birthday or anniversary when I was there. So here's this brand that is old but has continued to evolve and has this huge corporate structure behind it. And it was really amazing to have that for our first job because I was in the marketing department, but we worked very closely with operations and
Yes.
entertainment and food and beverage and just all these pieces. And despite it being a well-established company, the things that I had exposure to building, and from a marketing perspective, of course, Hershey, you say the word Hershey, even if someone hasn't been to the town, they
Know
know
the candy.
the
Sure.
chocolate, right?
Sure.
So there's that brand awareness and the love. And it's so funny that you sent me a picture of your family there because when you say Hershey, people want to tell you their experience and
They
their
do.
time there and their story.
Yeah.
There's this love for the brand, which was so great. So having the opportunity to be part of that and to build and to launch things like new roller coasters and a chocolate
Yes.
spa and all of these,
Yes.
really cool product launches from a marketing standpoint is like someone's dream. And here I am out of college spending 15 years building this iconic brand.
And what people might not know is that in addition to the park, right? So think of it if you've been to like Six Flags or, Kings Island here in Cincinnati, you have, it's similar, right? There's an amusement
Yep.
park, but then there's also like a resort and hotels
Yes.
that are affiliated with the brand. You have this sort of like museum and factory tour
Yep.
that you can do. So there's kind of a like little megalopolis going on around
Right.
this city. And that I think is interesting because you were really involved with a lot of those different pieces of it,
Yes.
not just one.
Yeah. And
Marketing
concerts
it.
and hockey games. So, doing AHL hockey for the Hershey
right.
Bears. And actually you talk about like highlights. This is so funny, but one of my summers, I did the summer concert series. So Hershey attracts
Yes.
all these big name concerts.
Yes.
And my job was the PR and promotion. So
Oh,
I
you got
had
to
give
greet the talent.
I had to
Oh,
meet all the talent, give them a 5-pound chocolate bar, get my picture taken. So it's hilarious to like this day. I'm like, I met that person. I met that person.
you have
And
all
my
these photo
kids-
ops from the, yeah.
Right.
It's funny, isn't it? When we leave pieces of our career behind, the things you look back on and miss are not like the core work always. Sometimes it's just some of the perks that were like really memorable experiences. Hmm. So
Yes.
fun. So at some point along the way here, you make this big pivot. Maybe it doesn't feel as big to you. It looks like it from the outside. And you end up at Duck Donuts, which is a brand that a lot of listeners are going to recognize because you took that business from 20 to 200 units. So now most of us have been in a state or an area that has a Duck Donuts. But before we say how you got there, can you tell them a little bit about what the brand is? Like, what's its kind of claim to fame?
Yeah, so Duck Donuts is a made to order donut concept. It started in the Outer Banks in Duck, North Carolina, hence the name. And the founder was there on vacation years ago and realized there was no place to get a warm made to order donut. So he started it. And what started as just this, little donut shop in the Outer Banks, which if you've ever been there is just this chill,
Iconic,
quaint
yeah.
beach town, right? It became this cult like following. People loved the brand. So he started franchising and it was the going in, ordering your donuts, getting to choose your topping. So you could say, oh, I want a all vanilla cake donuts, but I want a donut with vanilla icing and Oreo cookies or maple bacon. And then they drop the donuts, they make them right then, and they hand you a box of like warm, fresh donuts.
Fresh, custom.
If you never had a warm
donut.
donut, you need to.
I know. Yeah. I lived in Atlanta where Krispy Kreme rules the day. And
Yep.
they would put a sign up that would say hot donuts. So you knew if they had just been made or not. It's wild.
Yes. Yeah. A warm
But the
donut is different.
customization was really the point of difference for Duck, right? I mean, they were like, we're going to make your donut for you with the toppings that you choose. And you imagine being on vacation with your kids. What a blast that would have been.
Absolutely. Yes. We used to say we had a duckzillion combinations, right? Because you could do so many different icings and the toppings, and then you could drizzle more icing on top. And, so it was definitely, and very rarely did we run out of a donut. Sometimes you go into a donut shop and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have any more chocolate icing donuts, right? Well, very rarely. I'm not saying it never happened, but because they were made to order, it was like, oh, we can make that for you. So
how did you end up there?
So it's funny, being at Hershey for 15 years in various marketing positions, as I mentioned, amazing brand, I love the opportunity, but I knew my boss, who was the CMO, was not going to be heading anywhere anytime soon, which was a good call because she's still there 10 years later.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that worked. So just kind of kept feelers out there that, hey, if you hear of anything, like I didn't want to leave just to leave. I wanted to leave for a good opportunity. Let me know. So someone in my network had reached out and said, hey, Duck Donuts is opening their corporate headquarters in the Harrisburg area where I live in Pennsylvania. And they want someone to come in and build their marketing team. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. I'm Googling, Duck Donuts.
Donut, right.
Yeah, what's a Duck Donut? I don't even know if I'm interested in the product. And I had reached out to some of my girlfriends who would always go to the Outer Banks because I had not been to Outer Banks at the time. And they were like, oh my gosh, you have to take this interview. They were so excited. And I'm like, this is a donut. Why are you so excited about me taking this interview?
High net promoter score.
They're right, part of the cult following. So when I met with the founder, who was the CEO at the time, he painted this picture of, hey, here's this brand that has made this crazy cult-like following in the Outer Banks. And we decided to start franchising. And now, we need to become more sophisticated. So what started really as for a marketing role is what I started there at. I was employee number 12, and I was the first person outside their friends and family circle. So talking about culture shock and things being different, coming from a really large, very structured, very corporate, very political company like Hershey to this startup that was mom and pop run, very unsophisticated, and they were growing quickly, selling franchises crazy fast. So it was trying to figure out how to come in and set it up for success to continue to move forward.
Marketing at this time, you took a marketing role, and so you were focused on consumer demand. You weren't working on the expansion plans at that time. Okay,
no, and
that changed quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say originally there was no need for expansion plans because they couldn't even keep the volume of inquiries at the time. So so when I started, it was just marketing and getting clear on the brand strategy and the marketing strategy, and there were several ducks and just things like that. But as I was doing that and building out the team, I was a team of one. So here I come from this huge marketing team, decent staff, to now coming up with these ideas and then looking around and being
and executing them.
Yep. Oh, I have to do this too. So really just focused on marketing for the first year, but because it was a small company, I worked closely with the founder and, asking all those questions of well, how many do we want to open? What are our goals? What about the strategy? And he's like, he's the pure founder, right? That's his thing. He has ideas, he moves on. So he was like, Oh, so we naturally had a really good working relationship from the beginning because just totally opposite thought processes and support. And that's how I'd really continue to take on additional responsibility
And
there.
I feel like I've heard you talk about some traction terminology. So you're familiar with traction.
Yes. Yep.
So, I mean, he's a visionary.
Correct.
And
100%.
you essentially fulfilled some of this integrator role without realizing
Absolutely.
that's what you were doing at the
Yep.
time. So for my entrepreneur listeners, they'll know a little bit of inside baseball there. But so classically in a company that started by someone who just has a big idea, Disney being one of them, probably Hershey to some extent, you have this visionary leader who then doesn't know how to operationalize this.
Right.
How am I going to make this bigger is like a whole different skill set. And so having a partner that can come alongside you and start to demonstrate aptitude where you just don't have it because you're on to the next idea
Yep.
is really powerful. And it sounded to me as I was listening, like, oh, you fell into that role without necessarily knowing.
Not even knowing it. Now it's funny
So
because I'm
interesting.
all in for traction. I read, we implemented EOS eventually at, even at Duck, but it is funny. And now even working with all these entrepreneurs, it's a different skill set, right? Like they're the ideas, they're very impatient, they move fast, and that's why they're successful. There's no denying that. But then there comes a point when you're growing a company where it's like, okay, well, we can't just keep flying by the seat of our pants. Like at some point we need to start having the structure and the quarterly rocks and all of those pieces to be successful.
Oh, I could nerd out on that for a long time, but a little niche maybe for some of the listeners. So I think, so you go on this climb and you move from like marketer, ill-defined role, right? Just come be the marketer, employee 12. We need somebody
Literally.
to market.
No title.
Ultimately the COO role.
Correct.
And alongside this growth. And then this firm is acquired. My understanding is private equity comes in to help really throw fuel on this. And you do something really bold.
Which parts?
Well, what I think is throwing your hat in the ring to be CEO.
Oh, yes.
I think that's bold.
That
to
is
go
bold.
from
That's fair.
I'm the marketer, I'm doing this operations work. I don't really have any executive CEO C-suite experience yet. And I think I can do that. I love that part of the story.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny because you're right. I was in marketing for probably a little over a year. And at one point, Russ was the founder said, I'm going to promote you. I'm going to make you COO. And I'm like, what? We don't even have titles here. You're gonna make me COO. And they never put marketing people in charge of operations. But again, smaller team working together, worked a lot with ops in the past at Hershey. So was in that COO role for probably, I guess, 2-3 years. And then it was COVID. So this is all going on during COVID too. And that's when he said, hey, I think it's time. He was always upfront, like, hey, at some point I'm going to take this company as far as I can and I'm going to sell it to, probably private equity or whatnot. And it was going through COVID where he was intentionally stepping back and like letting me run things. So it's kind of ironic that was the timing and the test, which I don't ever recommend that test for anyone. But we're all on the other side. We made it.
Right.
Yeah. But it was, during that time. And then we start going through the conversations with these PE groups. And like, it literally hit me one day because I never really thought about it. Wait, what happens when he leaves? Right. That it wasn't really, on your radar he doesn't want to continue to run the operation. He was very forward with the sale. I want to be on the board. I don't want to, be the CEO anymore. And then one day it did just sort of hit me and I'm like, wait, crap, we have so much positive momentum. I don't want someone coming in here and, changing the culture, taking us a different direction. Like things were just going really well. So I remember saying it in Russ's office to him and he was like, well, I've been waiting for you to say that.
No, fascinating. He's like, I saw
knew,
that.
Right. It's like he knew before I did, I think. And I think that was part of his plan during COVID when he was like, hey, I'm putting you out there. I'm here to support you, but I'm taking a back seat, So it was, I don't want to say it was a test, but it kind of was a test,
Maybe.
right? To see how it worked out.
And a test at a difficult time. Like, let's set the stage that you said you have a child who's 18. So in 2020, they were 12.
Right.
So you have a 12-year-old and what, like a 10-year-old?
A 9, yeah.
9 and 12. Okay. So we have a 9 and a 12-year-old, no C-suite kind of high finance experience. We're bringing private equity in. We're in COVID in this march to expansion, and you're going to add the CEO role. So you see why I love this bold move? Yeah. It's like, why not? Of course I'm going to do it.
So when you say that, you're right. That was crazy.
So it's great. And I think, but it's bold. And I'd really like to understand, like, what were some of the things about that behind the scenes that, because we can talk all day about your professional accomplishments in this, but I think what's really intriguing is what is it like in the part we can't see, right? What's going on at home? What's going on in terms of keeping all the wheels turning while you're doing that work?
Yeah, no, it was chaotic. And I mean, take, COVID out of it at that point, we were slowly coming out of things getting slightly normal, I guess. But to your point, schools weren't normal. The kids weren't normal. I'm trying to travel because of course we have locations throughout,
Sure.
the nation essentially. Oh, and then we were going international. So there was international travel that needed to sort of be in there. So, it was definitely chaotic. And when you have franchisees and as a brand, it adds a whole other layer of complication because, you have to make sure your employees are happy, but then you have to make sure your franchisees are happy. And
That's
that, of
right.
course, is based off of them making money. If they're profitable, they're happy. If they're not, they're coming for you. So,
Not so much. Right.
it was this pressure of, and then the PE group on top of that, right? So that was probably the most difficult part to me. At that part, I had been dealing with the franchisees. Again, they make money, they're happy. They're not, we got issues.
Sure.
Team was changing because we kept bringing in new people with more experience, which was great. But there was a lot of people that didn't fit the culture and, had a great resume and interviewed well. And then, a couple months into it, you're like, oh, this is not the right
Not going to
fit.
work. Right.
Not going to work.
And this is for anyone who hasn't worked with private equity, the thing I'm always saying to clients is it's, the pace, the expectations around pace go up so significantly when you bring in an investor group. And the results orientation, the speed to results, the kind of like pressure cooker environment is really real. And so to go through that for the first time while in that life stage, while a first time CEO, I think that's a real, crucible assignment to be tested in. Any collateral damage, like, when you look back on it, are there like blackout periods where like, I don't even remember that year? I have one year. Like
it's kind of interesting. Our numbers from a financial perspective weren't terrible during COVID. So that first year or two, we were still kind of sliding in on having solid numbers during COVID.
fake out, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were sprinkling happiness, right? People were still eating donuts. So that was almost, I don't want to say the easier part. It was just trying to figure out how to prioritize all the things that needed to be solved. And again, what PE wants is different than what the employees want. And it's what's different than the franchisees want. Then you have to think about what the customer wants. So trying to appease everybody is, I would say, nearly impossible, right? Because everyone's goals are so different and they don't align. So that was probably the biggest challenge. And again, the first 2-3 years, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was easier. And then when sales started getting like lower, then that's when I feel like
it's a real challenge.
That's when, that's when the pressure cooker comes up from everyone, from the franchisees,
of course,
from PE, from your team being like, what the heck's going on? So those are the parts where you're like,
what kind of support did you bring in at home, if any?
I had to learn to be a better delegator. I don't think I'm I'm controlling probably.
We all are.
And I like everything to be done my way. And, I always joke, especially with having one in elementary school, like, and I would still be on the PTA and I'd still help with the events and I still try to do everything to be present. And I think that was, at some point I was like, I don't have to bake these stupid cookies. I'm going to
I could bring duck donuts to the event.
Right. Actually, I can bring
somebody get me some donuts for this thing.
Yeah. So I think it was delegating and letting go of like, everything doesn't have to be perfect. And I was traveling a lot. And I remember and when my kids were younger, my husband one time, before I would leave, I would make sure their clothes were set out for the week and lunches were packed and laundry was done. And I had dinner in the freezer or whatever. All this crazy prep. And the one time he looked at me and he's like, why do you keep doing all this shit?
Yeah. Like, I can do this. Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know, because I thought I needed to. He's like, we'll figure it out. And maybe figuring out was going to McDonald's. I don't know, but it didn't matter. Like, it wasn't my concern. They're with their dad. They're going to be fed. They're going to have a bed to sleep in. They'll find something fantastic to wear.
Yeah. So, I want to just pause to underline that lesson though, because I think that I talk a lot about questioning invisible rules and rewriting them, right, in a way that's right for this season, for this era. And there's an invisible rule of like a good mom is the one who handles all of those things. And you're following it just dutifully. Like, well, it doesn't matter that I'm also a CEO. I'm still going to follow these kind of good mom rules. And I think maybe he was the catalyst to question them a little bit. But at any point, we get to question those rules and say, like, is this still serving me in this era? Am I maybe making this harder than it has to be? And that was a beautiful illustration of it. And it doesn't matter who your wake up call comes from. At some point, we have to realize, like, I can lay a little bit of this down and the world's not going to fall apart. Yeah.
And it's wild because, it's recognizing that in yourself. But then I also have seen friends do this through
Of
the years too,
course.
right?
And
And
probably
it's
people who
easier.
work for you.
Absolutely. And it's easier when you see somebody else doing it, like, why are you doing that? Like, it's okay. And it's this pressure and this expectation that like my husband wasn't asking for, my kids weren't asking for. It was me being like, I need to do all these things because that's just what needs to be
That's what
done.
we
And
do.
yeah, it's realizing that's not the case.
It's really, and I think the reality is if we want to have careers as lofty as yours has been, something does have to give. And it doesn't mean we don't want to be present for key moments with those kids. You clearly want to be a present
Yep.
parent and you want them to know you care for them and you can take care of these needs. But at some point, we have to reorient like the total market basket that we can fit or we
Yes.
are going to break. Like there'll be no
Absolutely.
room for us.
No.
Okay. So then, how long were you acting as CEO?
So I was CEO for 4 years.
Okay. And from that, any standout high or standout low from the experience?
I think just seeing a brand grow from such infancy to being international, and again coming from Hershey, where the brand was established, right? Everybody
Sure.
knew Hershey, had heard of it, even if they had not been to the destination. And I always think back to opening locations around the globe internationally. So went to Dubai, went to Thailand, went to Qatar, went to Egypt, and opening Duck Donuts there was a whole other level of just like, okay, this is wild. Like here we are, 4,000 miles around the globe, introducing these people to an American brand who were so excited to find it
Love
and meet
it.
it and eat it, of course. That was just a whole, every time you open a location or expansion was great, but doing the international piece was just very wild to me. To, like, I
I
never
would
thought
think
that.
so because you can translate like, oh, this is how McDonald's must have felt, or this is how,
Yeah.
some of these iconic brands that moved into these markets and really built a global unified presence around demand for that thing so
Right.
that people can come from one country to another and still find it. Like,
Yep.
I think that that's a heady experience to get to have
Yeah,
with
that was
any
pretty
brand.
cool. And I
Yeah.
think just setting so much of the foundation, I would say that to the team all the time. Again, most of the team came from bigger brands who had outside experience. And when you come in and so much is already established and created, not that you can't make change, but it's a lot harder. But I mean, it was like, hey, this is like, I don't want to say a clean slate, but we're growing something and we need to be able to make those changes and be nimble and still have that entrepreneurial spirit, even though, of course, we got more sophisticated, more layers, more structure. But just having that ability to really impact something was, I think, potentially a once in a career opportunity.
Yeah. Definite high to get to be a part of the international expansion. So you organically brought this up at home. I asked you, like, what did you have to kind of get some help with or let go of? What about at work? As you ascended to those higher and higher levels, what did you have to learn maybe to let go of or do differently there?
What's funny is I think I have always been a good delegator professionally, which is
At work, yeah.
hilarious, right? While I had issues at home being a delegator or
Different
just a
invisible
forgetter,
rules.
maybe, right? I think delegating was never my issue. The biggest thing I think I learned was how important your leadership team is and having the right people. Here, another like cliche, but right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
And those seats change as you grow. And that was probably the hardest part of Duck was the people piece of it, because what you needed at 50 locations was different than what you needed at 150 locations in terms of roles and people. And that evolution was really hard to keep up on. And again, bringing people in that fit the culture and had the experience and will get their hands dirty, right? This isn't, 100-person team. The team was small and scrappy, and they had to be able to grow. So that was the biggest part, was the leadership piece within that, of like, right people, right seats change. How do you stay
How
ahead of
big
that?
was the team?
So when I left, there was 28 employees,
Okay.
corporate
Yeah.
employees.
I mean, that's a sizable team, but still one you can get your arms around. Like
Yep,
you can know everybody's
totally.
name. You can know,
Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah,
role
for
and,
sure.
interesting. So we're kind of heading to this next pivot. So there is a point where you make the decision to leave. That's time for a new chapter.
Yep.
And that was how long ago?
So that was January of 2025. So, working for private equity is very different than working for a founder. And there comes a time where when things aren't aligned and people aren't aligned, and it was like, this is time for,
This is where we part
a
ways.
pivot. Yeah. Which is wild. Like I never would have, thought that. And I think all those things are short term, right? At some point, like the PE flips it to another PE, and like
Absolutely.
usually the leadership team changes anyway. So like, I knew that Duck wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be here for the rest of my career. Like that was never on my like
Right.
bingo card, right? Like that's just not that doesn't happen in this industry at this point. But yeah, when I decided to leave, I didn't ever think it would be then, I guess. And kind of like what the next piece was the fun part of January of 2025.
Yes, which hasn't, as we're recording this, we're mid 26, right? So we're like 18 months ago ish was when this happened. When you think about the decision to then sort of do your own thing, to start your own brand. I was thinking about your career and I thought it's interesting. You stewarded this iconic brand first as a marketer. Then you grew and expanded a brand that was kind of went from fledgling brand to well-known global brand. Yep. And now you're starting a brand from zero, right? To have your own brand. So those are three really interesting journeys that you've taken. Tell us about this one.
Yeah. So when I left in January, you're on that kind of high of like, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm starting over. And, I was getting calls from big fun brands, but they were all a relocate. And as we talked about, I have, two teen daughters that, are not looking to move to Alabama or Arkansas or Oregon. So it was like, okay, we're checking that off. So suddenly all the recruiters go away, right? They're like, okay, you're on our cannot relocate. We'll travel, but cannot relocate from Pennsylvania list. So, as that was sort of happening, like, okay, how does this play out? What's the next step? I knew what I enjoyed of my time at Duck was growing a brand, working with the founder, being that integrator, as we talked about. And I thought, well, gosh, I can take that experience and go do that at other emerging brands. There's so many franchise brands who are trying to grow and learned a lot, made mistakes, right? So how can I help somebody make less mistakes on their journey? So started doing some work on that last year and still this year. Was a little tough in restaurants and food because profit margins aren't there and people aren't spending as much when they're spending money on gas and everything economy related. So kind of just kept hitting some project work and, would have conversations and people would be like, we love to work with you. We just can't afford to do anything right now or just don't have the right fit for a project. So just really was hopping around trying to figure out like, okay, well, I don't have to do restaurants. I don't have to do franchising. My skills are transferable into another industry, but I don't have those contacts in those other industries. So I keep getting pulled or sucked, which I'm pulled and sucked back into the restaurant and franchising world because that's where my circle is.
Network
and that's
is.
where my network is. So
that's fascinating. Yeah. And I hadn't thought about that it would make sense that the people that would look to you to do this work with them would be already within they have high trust already, right? You always think about know, like, and trust, and they have all of those things with you. And then you can bring this particular skill set. So are you looking to expand that into other industries now? Is that kind of part of the plan? Or do you think you'll stay with doing this work inside of the food service industry?
Yeah. So I've tried to escape restaurants and I can't.
You're like, I'm stuck with this.
So. I found more of a groove, with some clients now, some more fractional work, which helps just from a consistency standpoint, right? So here I am coming from corporate jobs where you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. That's so stable. And sure, you can be let go at any time, but you just feel stable and being out on your own where it's like, oh, I have to sell and I have to execute. And, at one point I'm like, I can't take on any more work. And then one of my bigger clients went away.
Goes away. You're like, wait, now I want work again. Right?
Yeah. And you're like, who was looking for me a couple of weeks ago? So it's just this wild balance of that. So I'm still working through it. Everything I've done really has been around restaurants, but trying to look more for those fractional executive roles that feel a little bit longer term, that I can focus on. But it's still all been restaurants. So I would be happy to do.
Yeah. There's so much value to add. I think the reality is that when you have businesses that have not seen the level of discipline and rigor that you clearly saw at Hershey, and then you were able to bring to Duck because you had that experience, that just has a never-ending cascade, right? There are so many organizations that need to kind of reverse engineer those practices. And you're really good at them. And so that will happen for sure. And then you have, I'm guessing, this passion project around a podcast. And I love the title. Can we talk a little bit about your pod?
Absolutely.
So it's called Loud and Lifted.
Yeah. So it's funny, as this is all going on with restaurant land, right? And just kind of the inconsistency there. I had always said when I was at Duck that I wanted to do a podcast and I wanted it to be about women and how we get so hung up on the boys club and that, oh, there's a boys club. And blah. Yes, there's 100% a boys club. It exists, right? It's real. But the bigger issue is women. Like, we are not good at supporting each other. And we also are so hard on ourselves and don't always have those tools and resources to negotiate, have the hard conversations. So I started a podcast, I guess it was in March of last year, called Loud and Lifted, and it's around that platform of women supporting women and having the tools and resources in order to be successful in their career. So never had any intentions of it being anything than other, just like a fun podcast. I'm probably not going to make money off of it. It's fine, but I enjoy doing it. Started having really amazing conversations with women that I just loved being able to do. But as I was doing those things, people started asking like, well, do you do workshops? Do you do coaching? Do you do speaking, which I had done a lot of speaking, of course, being a female CEO does have its perks.
Yeah, you get some speaking out of that.
They're like, oh, we need a woman. Oh, let's call Betsy. She's on the short list. So those types of things started coming up, which have been great. So suddenly I'm like, well, this is kind of fun, right? Like I really love the piece of supporting women and again, giving them those tools to be successful. So that's continued over the last, especially like 6 months, pick up some traction, which I love. And then I also launched circles. I'm calling them the Loud and Lifted Circle, where they're in-person meetings for women that are monthly, small group, like less than 10 women who get together. And it's a safe space, right? Like it's someone you can have conversation with or issue processing or brainstorming or just that connection of people who are all in different industries, but, senior level women in person to have those conversations to help them, because every woman talks about the fact that what makes them successful is the support around them. So, to your earlier question, that's what I think it takes. It takes the support. It takes the whole village. And that's personally, that's professionally, and that's being able to have real conversations with women who can help support you. So all of that has been picking up traction in the last few months, as I mentioned. So that's been really exciting. So I'm hoping, maybe as restaurants are great, they're always going to be there, but maybe this continues to become more of my focus, which, would be very different than what I ever would have. It would
be like a bit of a portfolio approach of some different things that you could do that are all feeding, like pulling from your talent and your experience, feeding your curiosity, like keeping you stimulated. Because I say this to a lot of the women that I'm coaching, like when you like a lot of juice, you like a lot of juice. You're not going to be able to just like kick back and have it, be nice and calm. Like it just won't feel right. You have a lot of opportunity to still be of service and contribute and do kind of exciting things. And so that season that you're in where you're figuring it out, like these last 18 months for you, we want to rush that all the time and be like, I got to land in the next place and tell you exactly what it is. And I kind of like, a discovery and exploration season where you're like, I'm not sure where this is going to land. I'm trying a bunch of stuff on for size, might stick, might not, like we'll see, and staying open to those like yellow door moments, where something will just come onto your radar that you didn't go looking for, and you can walk through it and be like, well, I think Duck was kind of like that for you. You didn't
absolutely.
See it coming. It didn't. Right. Turned out to be a big chapter.
Absolutely. And it's funny when you say that, because I do think back to how things sort of just come, I don't want to say come together. There's time and effort and networking, but it's just, you don't always see it. And that's totally been, that was Duck 100%. But even in this last year and a half, I'm like, oh yeah, just restaurants. And then I'm like, well, maybe there's this thing over here. And, I definitely felt very scattered, especially this time last year. Like, what am I doing? I'm trying to do everything. I can do anything for anybody. Like, you just become very unfocused. So it's balancing, like having some focus, right? Yes. And what you can do and what your strengths are, but not being like, I can do anything for anybody. And
that's not good either, right? You're like classic marketing 101. I'm probably going to need an ideal client. Yeah,
literally. And it's been taking my own
it's so hard
experience and listening to myself, like what I would tell somebody else, like, know your customer, focus your message, be consistent, blah, blah, blah. And then like, I'm not doing that. Right. So I did have one of those, oh, maybe I should listen to my own advice.
What do they say? Physician, heal thyself, right? It's really true. You have this like so much easier to see it. Someone told me one time, you can't market something if you're what's in the bottle. And I thought that's really interesting. Like, you can't see the label if you're inside the bottle. And there's something powerful about having thought partnership from someone external. Even those of us who are, I spent a lot of years at P&G marketing. Like, I'm good at it. But when it's your own brand, sometimes you need external eyes helping.
Absolutely.
Really see.
It's so hard. It's so hard when it's you. It's weird. And from like knowing your brand and how to I'm like, I never thought I had an issue negotiating. I do have an issue negotiating
when it's for yourself. Right.
Right.
It changes.
It just changes everything when it's you.
It does. So I love the concept of Loud and Lifted because it reminds me of, I had a mentor at P&G who used to say, as women climb the ladder, they have to lift as they climb. To turn around. And I think the idea of lifted to me is what I really get out of that from your brand. And I like the loud part, that it's a little sassy of like, we're going to have to tell the truth here. Yes. We're going to have to tell the truth to each other. And and not be performing for each other, but just
Correct.
be telling the truth so we can learn. You've done such a service today of just telling the truth humbly about some of the things that were hard in this journey.
Right.
And we don't always get that from
No,
the
we get
kind
the
of
highlight
shiny,
reel.
glossy, like
Yeah.
polished
Yeah, we get
bio
the
or
highlight reel.
whatever.
That's the hard part, right? Is like, okay, this sucks. And sometimes things are
Sometimes it's
fabulous. And other
hard.
times you're like, should I sell my house? Like,
Right. I have to send these kids to college. Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
right. It's
So
balancing
you
those.
have this very impressive resume. Last question. When you look back on your career and on your parenting from this vantage point, what are 2 or 3 things that you're the most proud of?
Oh, that's such a big
I
question.
won't make you pick one. It's too hard.
I think I'll kind of tie it together, honestly. As I mentioned, I have 18 and 15-year-old. So they're at those 8 girls. So they're at that age where they're very observant, of course, and very opinionated. And I can see, especially with the one going to college, like she's connecting the dots, right? Like she's asking the right questions. They advocate for themselves. They support their friends. I'm not saying they're perfect, of course, but I can see those qualities that I talk about that I think are so important, like in my girls. Again, they're human. They're not perfect, but I think, as they continue to grow and get into professional situations, I'm hoping that I've given them those tools that they can
Yes.
use then to be able to have the tough conversations, be able to figure out how to push back on a bad boss and all of that. So I guess it's not really done since they're only 18 and 15, but so far we're at a point where I feel like
You're at
they're
an
on the right
inflection
path.
point for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so great. And I think it's not surprising given what I've just learned about you in this conversation. I mean, I think when we look at where our legacy impact shows up, we sure hope it's going to show up at home.
Right.
Like, what are we modeling for these people that we're raising? And are they seeing a holistic picture of what it looks like to be a woman who is professionally ambitious and personally really present for their life? And you were in so many ways and will continue to be, of course. Love
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
Betsy, where can people find your things online so we can link them in the show
Yeah,
notes?
absolutely. Check out LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn for Betsy Hamm on LinkedIn or betsyhamm.com and loudandliftedpodcast.com.
Perfect. We will link them all up. Thank you for
Thank
being with
you.
us today. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me.